Welcome to the Marriage and Mating Summit, presented by the College of Empowerment to help us all get our ships together. At the College of Empowerment, we're innovating personal and professional development with an online community, courses, and private coaching. Take a course. Get a coach.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. It feels like I'm going to sing the song, Welcome Back. Anyway, I'm going to give you fair warning. This is our final panel of today. And so I might be just a little bit excited. So y'all just get ready for a great time. So listen, it's no secret. Healing has truly become a buzzword. But when it comes to healing and relationships, the opinions and the advice vary a lot. Someone even wrote a book, and I remember seeing this book. I promise y'all that this book exists. It's called Men Don't Heal, They Hoe. And so I think it's important that we sit down and have a proper conversation about healing while dating and married. So I went and got some more amazing guests, some more amazing panelists. Be sure that you are tapped in and tuned in. Drop those comments, those questions, and anything else that you want to share. We are definitely going to have yet another amazing time. Also, quick reminder, if you're not signed up, you will not be eligible for the giveaways that we're doing on day 2. So I want to make sure that you do that. And if you don't know who I am, allow me to properly introduce myself. My name is Stephanie D. McKenzie. I am an award-winning marketer as well as a multi-certified empowerment coach. And I also happen to be the founder of something called the College of Empowerment. So that's me. My guests, however, are even more stellar. My first guest is Britney Brown, aka Miss Britney B. She speaks her mind on the issues that matters. She is a mother, sister, and proud member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. She holds a bachelor's degree in social work, but she's also working on a master's. And I am super excited to have her join the conversation. In addition to this man, whom I actually think of like family, definitely call him my brother from another mother, Thomas Edwards Jr. is the visionary founder of the Professional Wingman, a groundbreaking platform dedicated to empowering men in their quest for personal and relational excellence. His unique approach to helping men grow includes game design, world-class coaching, emotional intelligence, and applied behavior. I want you guys to give a hearty College of Empowerment welcome to Ms. Britney B. and Thomas Edwards. Hello, hello. Welcome,
Hello.
welcome. How are you guys? How are you doing tonight?
Good. Tonight is a great night. I'm glad to be here.
We got it's a great night, right? And we're gonna have a great time. I am thoroughly convinced we're gonna have a great time. We've already got the comments rolling in. Wiggy Hill Wilson says greetings, and that she is all ears, and I think those are ears of corn. So she is right in the right place because we love that type of goofiness and playfulness. And then Mimi says, hello, everybody. So I want to just go ahead and get into this conversation because I think you heard in my introduction that somebody actually wrote a book called Men Don't Heal, They Hoe. And that has disturbed me greatly. I found out about that. I feel like it was in the early 2000s. I went to a relationship panel, and the author, I think the author was there, or the author's friend was there. And I'm like, that's slightly disturbing. But nevertheless, healing is a big deal. Everybody's healing, trying to heal, selling healing, talking about healing, making podcasts about healing, doing panels about healing. So healing in its truest form is really a big deal. And so I just want to kick this off with the question of how can you tell the difference between a healing process and just flat out dysfunction? Britney, start us off.
Okay, that was a good question. I think that you can tell the difference. You can tell the difference by the accountability. If a person is willing to take accountability for their actions, then they are taking a step towards healing. The lack of accountability can tell a lot about a person and in their journey, and if they are actually working on healing and doing better, because the healing journey is not, it's not going to be roses all the time. Everything is very painful. I mean, everything is not always good, but you can tell if a person is trying, most definitely, if they are taking accountability for their actions and they are showing you that they are trying to do better.
Okay. I could buy into that. Thomas, what are your thoughts?
I love this question. I feel like dysfunction, when it's not accounted for and it's the behavior is repetitive, can be considered even a form of insanity, right? And when you're not making effort and you're just repeating the behavior, that's, I would say, is the antithesis of healing, right? You're just creating more wounding in your life. And the healing, and I'm sure we'll go deeper into this, right? But there's levels and layers to healing. Healing can just be as simple as a behavioral change that happens, or it could be a complete transformation, or it could be even a whole nother level where it's a transfiguration, which implies some spiritual change as well. So I think healing is a form of change, and dysfunction, I see it more as a repetitive behavior that causes more harm.
I think I like what both of you are saying. But it brings. Now, I did not watch this show, but it keeps coming up in my life. The show Love Is Blind, and Clay taking responsibility. Oh, I wasn't ready. Oh, I wasn't this. I'm going to leave you at the altar. All of that. And I think I think that there's a fine line between even the taking accountability or taking responsibility and manipulation. So how would you tell the difference?
I think that manipulation
Thomas?
is
Brittany. Go ahead, Brittany. Sorry about that.
Okay. I think that manipulation is pretty much pretending like you're getting ready to change because you want an instant outcome. And we know that men are notorious for doing this, right? They do something in their relationship, and then here they are, hey, I'm going to change. I'm going to do this. But they want an instant. They normally do this because they want an instant. They want something to happen instantly. They want an instant change. They have an outcome that they are aiming for. So, I mean, that would be my take on that.
Yeah. It's hard to disagree. I'll bring a different perspective. I think when it's hard to tell the manipulation based on an objective perspective. When you look at it subjectively, you have to look at the character, the person, the behavior, but you also got to look at the other side of like who the manipulation is happening to and what's their response to it. If they're feeling hurt, betrayed, that could be a layer of that. I also feel like guys are routinely late to the game. And what does that mean? That means their healing happens late. Their realizations happen late. Oftentimes I find when I work with guys, they are in too deep to make the change, and they are so fearful of the ramifications to make the change that they don't make the change. And then there's situations like this where perhaps there was a revelation, there was a realization, and the damage was already going to be done. But could it have been worse if he had stayed in? Maybe. And I haven't watched it, so I have no frame of reference about the character of him and who he was with. So please just forgive me. I'm looking at it from a blanket statement. But But there are situations where, like Brittany said, like there's guys who want a certain thing, and because we think predominantly linearly and analytically, we only see process towards that thing that we want. And then whatever feedback we give is that instant validation or feedback of whether or not we're on the right path and trying to find our way. I think for a lot of guys, just based on my experience, they don't intend to be manipulative, but in the long run, it ends up becoming manipulative because of the effect it has on the person that they're connecting with.
Okay, Thomas. Now you said some things that I really need to unpack, because we even got some comments over here. Let's see. Wiggy says, wow. Reese, one of our panelists from tomorrow, said, and Moon Emperor says, routinely late for the game. A nice way to put it. And as it relates to Clay, I think she says she's dodged a bullet. Moon Empress is in the place, and she says peace and love to everyone. You can catch Reese as well as Moon Empress 888 on our panel regarding dating after divorce tomorrow. And Creative Soul is in the house. Hey again. So you said something that I need you to unpack. You said men are routinely late for the game. I need to know more. Say more.
From a basic perspective, I would say, men are raised to function. And because that's the general programming, there's no space for them to check in with their being. There's no space to check in with their meaning. And I'm not even getting into feelings yet, right? But just understanding their role in this world, the programming is that they just do. And there's a big part of that. And there's responsibility that comes with that. But the after effect of that is that everything else gets delayed. So we're looking at people in their 30s, in their 40s, in their 50s, sometimes in their 60s, just now coming around to the idea of understanding what it means to be, what it means to not just have purpose from a functional perspective, but to have meaning beyond their purpose. So when I say guys are routinely late to the game, it's because of that. Everything is underdeveloped on the emotional side and is late to mature, if it even gets there, honestly. I mean, I've worked with guys who they don't get there. We have to do the work together to help them get there. So that's often the thing that I see when I mean, guys are late to the game, so to speak.
Oh, that's good. Brittany, I know that you spend a lot of time working with people around love as well as self-love in your work. What are your thoughts on the men being late to the game?
I honestly, it is so satisfying hearing him say that, because oftentimes, how many people do we work with where they are in relationships and they are just yearning for their partner to catch up with them? But then it takes me back to the question of dating your age or dating someone who is 10 years older than you, or dating someone who is younger than you. The mindset and the mindset of the person who, really is you're in a relationship with, because catching up too late is like almost, I'm kind of sorry, but I need this to happen now. And sometimes, it's just the damage that's done is not worth the wait. So to
we're
reiterate on that.
Okay.
So to say, when it's talking about self-love, you have to know your worth. And I'm big on knowing your worth, because you have to know when it's time for you to step out or not. And enough is enough for you. And that is something that is depends on the individual. It is not a collective thing. That's why I always talk about self-love being the first love in a relationship, because that is the love that is going to keep you sane, keep you mentally and emotionally fit for a relationship.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. You know, I feel like
Definitely. I'm like,
with,
and I know, go ahead, Thomas. Yeah.
yeah, so I feel like, you know, and I'm speaking as a guy who has lived this life. I can definitely say that, you know, guys don't get exposed to the level of emotional experience that women do. And for that reason, they lack emotional intelligence. The gap between men and women in terms of emotional intelligence is really vast. And as you were saying, you know, the kind of the paradox between dating, you know, your age, or what I just like, I don't know, it just came up in my mind, but like dating your sage is really important because your level of emotional intelligence has a direct impact on the quality of the relationship and the quality of the person that you're going to be in a relationship with. So even something as simple, and I know I'm using a very generalized example here, so just consider that. But when you see guys who are dating younger women, oftentimes it's because the level of emotional intelligence is equal. And obviously there's other reasons there too, but that seems more manageable for a guy at that caliber than someone who would be considered a high status individual with a lot more experience and intelligence. They're going to be looking for a much higher quality woman. But here's the reality: there aren't a lot of those guys out there, you know, and we got to step up. We got to do the work. And that's what we're here to talk about. But we got to do the work to get to that level so we can be in position to create attraction and create relationships with those similar caliber women.
I absolutely agree with that.
Okay, wait. I need to get into this really quickly though, because I know somebody wants to know, you don't just work with men though, correct?
No. I feel
Thomas?
called to work with men. So I work with men, you know, predominantly, but you know, I've spent over a decade working with women. So when they come to me, they're trying to figure out, what's the guy thinking? Like, what is he thinking? You know, and I always give it to them straight, because as a guy, we're very rudimentary in our thinking. We're not advanced in our in our emotional state. And so it does simplify the understanding and the meaning behind guys' actions. And sometimes what we think is emotionally deep and creates complexity in the situation is actually not the experience itself. It's the person creating the experience. But when I'm able to kind of bring it from a guy's perspective, it really creates a lot of clarity because it's simple.
Brittany, what are your thoughts?
I totally I get what he's saying. You know how I am, so I mean I get what I get what he's saying, and it is he's being very considerate here for having two women on here with him, and we thank you for that. But you know, there's a reality about this dating thing and manipulation when it comes to healing while dating. And the main thing is that when we start dating, right, women are always looking for that guy, while men sometimes are just looking for that time. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they're looking for some companionship. They're not looking for anything that is lasting, a lot of them, you know. So I think that we're coming with so much, women are coming with so much, our expectations are so high that sometimes we are kind of misleading ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So we're dating a guy that has the potential. And I can't stand when people say, oh, you don't date for potential. Well, I'm not dating for potential, but I have to date someone who I think has potential. But the thing about it is, it's the mindset catching up with the potential and them actually wanting to live up to the expectations that we are setting. And I think that is why I think that we should start dating and becoming friends and companions before we start taking it to the next level. My thoughts personally and professionally is that sometimes we're moving too fast and we don't know who we're with, because either we are lusting or we are just infatuated really quickly.
Yeah, I love that. You know, I think with guys, it's interesting, right? Because you know, the truth about guys is the validation that they seek is through physical intimacy. Period. That's the validation they seek. You could be dating, you could be in a relationship, you could be married, you could be married with kids, you could be empty nesters. Like it'll happen. There'll be other things that become more important over time as there's quality and there's a more shared experiences that happen over time. But guys are looking for that as their source of validation. It's almost a, I'm not making an excuse, but there is a wiring that is involved. And when that connection and that validation is made, then they have the capacity to start to see if there's future implications. Now, here's what's interesting about the future implications of a relationship. Does a guy feel like he's worthy of one? That's a question that I feel like not many men even think about answering. And when it gets to that point, after the dopamine has fallen, after being able to get that validation, it could really, you know, mess with them as an individual guy. And then in turn, they don't know what to do or how to handle the situation due to their lack of emotional intelligence. And it creates situations where they could abandon, they could run away, they could behave in a way that is completely counterintuitive or counter effective to what they were communicating before and not know even why it's happening, right? So when we talk about healing, there's such a gross lack of, and I'm calling guys out when I'm saying these things too. So I'm not saying this for all guys, but there are a lot of guys out there that have a severe lack of self-awareness. Maybe some awareness, but a severe lack of self-awareness because they don't have any idea what they're doing and how it's affecting the people around them, particularly in their relationships. And it's unfortunate because as women, you guys are in the crosshairs, right? You become impacted immediately by those type of behaviors. And so it does make dating, especially in today's world, really, really challenging because you have to date for potential. You have to, because you have to see that there's a future where the life that you have with them now gets better over time. That's the point. Mm-hmm. But if a guy can't see the potential in himself, he's screwed. And if he's not willing to put in the work to live up to that potential, not only is he screwed, but any relationship that he's in after that is screwed. And that's the part that we're you know, I like to talk about too, because it doesn't get talked enough about.
Wow. Okay. Mm-hmm. Everything that
I feel like there's so much to unpack in this. I'm like, no, I'm literally looking at the clock going, oh, I don't know how we're going to get through all of this. I mean, it's just flying. But see, that's what happens when you get Thomased. Because see, Thomas will come in and say things and you're like, I'm sitting over here in my head going, so that's why you fumbled me.
Right.
Okay. It's like I'm having all of these epiphanies. I know. It's like, it's Jim Central over here. You know, I'm just like,
yeah.
He's been right here.
Right. Like,
oh my goodness. But then that also makes me think about, let me say this. That also makes me think though, because there could be women who are watching this and they're hearing, they're like, okay, they could completely take what's being said as, okay, that means I need to give him a pass so that he can catch up. And if I need to decide, I'm going to wait it out. And so, I mean, Thomas, if somebody's thinking that, what do you say? What do you say to that thought process?
Great question. I don't think there's anything wrong with waiting, right? And I don't know if that's even the right word to use, because I don't think that's fair to you to wait, because you're still on your growth path, right? Like the way I think about it is, if I'm standing next to someone that I care about and we're having a shared experience and they start walking off, my natural inclination is to follow them, right? So when we think about it in the growth experience, when someone's growing and we're witnessing that growth happen, it either triggers something inside of you to try to like follow them from a growth path perspective, not follow their path, but from a growth path perspective, or you don't. And at some point you have to decide, okay, like this is going to be my boundary. Like if I'm not seeing something happen within a certain period of time, you don't need to be so specific. But if you're at a point now where you're walking and you're growing and you look back and you can't even see them, that's probably a good sign that this isn't working. And it doesn't mean that you wasted your time, because you're still growing yourself. You are much better than you were when you were when you started in the relationship. So it's just a matter of, for me, the way I see it is just perspective, right? Like I'm assuming that you're still going to be on your growth path. And hopefully it turns into a situation where he sees that and he's like, oh shit, like if she keeps going at this pace, she's going to look back and not think that I'm good enough. I need to step up my game. And sometimes, and it's unfortunate, that guys need that spark to then be able to create that vision for themselves, because they've lacked the ability to be able to do it themselves. There's not a lot of guys. I mean, there are a lot of guys. I don't want to make it seem like it's such a rarity, but it's not often you come across a guy that is clear in his vision, clear in his purpose, clear in his meaning, and is on the track of growth, and you can witness it, right? You can feel it. It's not something that you come across all the time. Oftentimes, guys have to go through deep peril and tragedy to have that activated and awakened within them. But a lot of guys, especially in today's world, because of the world that's laid out, are complacent. So they don't have the opportunities to be able to fall into that great peril, to activate that part inside of them. So to go back to answering your question, I think it's not, I wouldn't call it waiting, but because you're still moving. You're not just waiting for them to get up and go, although sometimes you might want them to so you can follow, right? But you're still on your growth path. And if you look back and you're realizing this person either is not next to you, not in front of you, or they're way behind you, then you have to start to assess, okay, is this person going to be for me?
Absolutely.
Oh, Brittany, I need your thoughts, my dear.
You need my thoughts. Okay. I'm
So
trying
many
not
thoughts.
to interrupt. So,
Yes.
yeah, I mean, it is. So we're living in a time where dating is particularly very difficult because people think that they have lots of options and they aren't willing to put the work in that needs to be done. And sometimes it's, they really need a reality check. And the reality check is that there are good women and men out here who are really, really and truly alone because of the fact that when they come across someone, I mean, a person that's not even really sort of, I don't want to say worthy, but not really worthy of their time because they don't see how much healing that this person has done. People don't realize that this healing, the healing journey, like Tommy said, it's layers to this. And when you get with someone who is healed, but you're still living like you're looking for superficial things, then to you it looks crazy. And their expectations look too high, or they might come off as being difficult to date. When in reality, it's you, and you need to check yourself, which is why I think that accountability is 100% the very first thing that we have to take when we are getting ready, when we are talking about dating. And then honesty. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about being honest and having open communication, because that in itself is something that particularly men don't really like. A lot of men don't like to communicate, but what I'm going to say is they don't like to communicate because they're afraid of what their partner may say or may think or may feel. So sometimes they want to spare their partner's feelings when in reality, this is something that we need to talk about because it's hurting our relationship and it's hurting our journey, and it's really keeping us from growing, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, how many clients have you all had where they come to you with something that you're like, well, y'all could have talked about that. You could have talked about that and, came up with a solution if you just, had talked about it the first time. But then again, how many people do we have who say, you know what, I tried to talk about it, but because they kept, they didn't want to talk about it, or how she reacted the first time, it closed him out. So now he's closed off. He does not want to speak. He does not want to come in and tell you things or talk about things that he thinks that will make you feel uncomfortable, but it only makes the relationship more toxic. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Guys, another thing guys don't realize is going on is they think rejection only takes place in the, initial stages of dating, right? When in the pursuit of a partner, that when you hear rejection, most guys immediately think when they approach them or when they try to flirt with them or they try to ask them out before they get their number. Rejection is something that's a part of a guy's life forever, right? Like, and you think about the different, milestones, so to speak, like asking for exclusivity, moving in together, conversations about finances, talking about values, proposing, getting married, having the words "I do" being said, choosing to have kids, choosing where to live, what's going to happen when the kids leave. Like, there's always going to be opportunities where a guy is going to have to share himself and be exposed to the possibility that he may be, quote unquote, rejected. I like to call it denied, because sometimes that doesn't mean it's a no. It just means maybe right now that's not accessible. But it doesn't have a bearing on you. But guys, because once again, we're talking a lot about emotional intelligence, and I think that's where a lot of the healing can take place. I also believe that healing is when you're dating or you're in a relationship, there are 3 types of healings that take place. There's your healing, there's my healing, and then there's our healing. And the our healing part becomes the metric of your healing, your individual healings now coming together. And that is unavoidable. And so, like, even though there's a possibility that you might create a train wreck of a relationship, I still believe it's worth the risk to go in there to get a gauge of what level of healing that is taking place and how much work you still need to do. And for guys, they don't have those. It takes one conversation to not go well for a guy to become a turtle and just go back into his shell. And once again, from an emotional, now we talked about emotional intelligence. Let's talk about emotional literacy, right? Like, there's not a lot of words that guys understand when they can define and identify and process their feelings. And so to even have them open up to talk about those things is also really hard for them, because it's almost like, they're going to the gym for the first time and they have no idea what exercise they should do to work what muscles. So it just comes out completely awkward. And when it's that awkward, they're super vulnerable, and that's when it gets a little spicy, because depending on the response can determine whether or not they may ever do that again.
Okay. Tell you what, give me 1 second, because this is getting too good. Whew. Okay, guys, if you're just tuning in, you have missed a humdinger of a conversation, but there's still time, right? There's still time. We are talking about healing while dating and married, with my amazing panelists, Ms. Britney B. and Thomas Edwards. And I feel like we're unpacking a 20-piece luggage set of the ideas of healing, the tropes of healing, the miseducation of healing. But before we get back into that conversation, let me give you guys a few announcements For those of you who are wondering, we're doing giveaways on day 2. So if you think you missed out, you still have time to sign up and tell a friend, because only those who sign up are eligible for giveaways and for our secret session tomorrow night with Nurse Millie J. We are having a very adult conversation. We're going to turn the lights down low and take it nice and slow and have a real conversation about some things that we don't often talk about. And so it's going to be a safe space. There will be no replays. There will be no recordings. And so the only way for you to get access is for you to sign up for the summit. Go to m&m.thecollegeofempowerment.com. That's M, the letter, A-N-D, M, the letter, thecollegeofempowerment.com. Additionally, speaking of the college, we're in the middle of our spring membership drive, which means that you can save an amazing 65% off of your hero and also your champion membership. The only way to do that, though, is to use the code SPRDRIVE to sign up. And listen, the College of Empowerment is really one of the few places where you can also take a course and get a coach, because we recognize that everybody just can't take courses. You need somebody that can support you. And so the College of Empowerment offers just that. This is our last panel for tonight. But again, we have our secret session on Friday and the panels on Saturday. Dating after divorce, and the finale, How to Relationship, the 2024 edition. So we're going to get back to this conversation. Keep your questions and your comments coming. I want to bring the panelists back because listen, we've got questions and comments out the wahoo. So guys, get in here. I want you guys to take a look at what we've got going on. So let's see. We are getting all the gems today, says Reese. That makes sense. Amazing. What do we have in here? Wiggy says so many men have delayed maturity issues, and to be fair, a lot of women do as well, and we need to be very fair about talking about that. I see a dang, LOL. And then Wiggy says men and women need a healing and growth process. We do. Mimi says it's a process. I protect my peace at all costs. I see a crying face, and it says wow, just hit it. Now we've got some questions coming up, and I just love this from Ironheart Blurred. It's the eyeballs. You just got to get into it, right? And then we've got some laughing faces here with Creative Soul. We've got some questions when we get to that. This is one of my favorite comments, not me reflecting. And so I love that. I love that this conversation is so meaningful to you guys. Keep the questions and the comments coming. You mentioned something earlier, Thomas, that I want to get into around when men share things. Now, I realize, guys, that we've had kind of a heteronormative conversation here. And so if you are not hetero and you are actually some other form in your sexuality, feel free to fill in the blanks as you need to. So that being said, you mentioned that a lot of times the way a man might continue to emote or share is largely contingent upon what happens when he first shares with that partner. Did I paraphrase that? Okay. Did I catch that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So that being said, if we're talking about healing while dating and married, then there's a part of this where we leave room and also become safe space for said partner. So how do we do that in a way that is affirming, even though we might be even in the midst of being triggered? I was going to say, even though we might be in the midst of our own stuff, but how can we be safe space and in the midst of our own triggers?
It's a great question. I'll share from personal experience, and just I know that it works. And it's a technique that I learned from a book, and it's called the Imago dialogue. And in that dialogue, you're giving someone a space. So in this case, you're giving the man a chance to express himself, and he will just share. And when he's done sharing, you reflect and you make sure that you heard him, right? You don't paraphrase. You try to use the exact words that he has, because that's the first part of him now feeling heard, because you're reflecting back. and then giving him the opportunity, if there's more for him to say, that you just repeat that process. And then when he's done, what you do is then you reflect back and say, I get it. That makes sense. It makes sense that you would feel that way. You don't have to agree. You don't have to completely understand, right? But you get to see him, because that's what he needs. He needs to be seen. And there's so many times where when we're in the throes of our triggers, you know, whoever's going to be the loudest is going to be the one who's the least heard. And when you're able to really allow that person to be heard, to be seen, which is usually what we hear when we talk about, you know, how women want to feel. Guys aren't willing to go out there and say that they want to be seen, they want to be heard, but that's why they do what they do. They work hard and they work to create a legacy for themselves, to be seen for their legacy, to be seen for their accomplishments. But we don't talk about the fact that they don't get to be seen for their emotions, because that's something that we've historically have told them to put aside. So there's a grand opportunity when guys are in the space where they can feel safe to do it, whether they've done that before or not. But no matter what happens, to give him that affirmation that what he did was actually a good thing and has the potential to help the dynamic that you two share, even if you disagree, even if you don't feel like he's right. It'll give the opportunity for when you guys are ready to co-create, when you guys are ready to collaborate on something, that he's going to be more willing to bring his emotions, his ideas, his thoughts, because he's going to feel more comfortable with being heard and being seen. And this is easier said than done. So I'm not saying this is something that's going to work like magic, but the practice of it and him feeling like there's a safe space for a guy feeling, you know, safe to express in that way, maybe in a way that he's never expressed himself before, I think creates a golden opportunity for growth.
I want to say that I totally 100% agree with you, but I think that it is a good idea for women to for the relationship, for each partner to allow time. Sometimes, you know, we are so quick to react. So once our partner, that's another thing, because sometimes the reaction is what shocks everybody, right? That's like a killer too, a deal breaker, how you react. So you know what? Sometimes it's good to allow your partner to speak, and then affirm, I heard you. I heard you. I hear you. And then take some time, but I need some time. And then also allowing that time, not thinking that a person is just going with withdrawing, you know, because you know they just don't want to talk about it, but just allowing the time. And I think sometimes we get impatient, right? So we get impatient and we don't want we want an instant gratification. No, I want to know that you know that you got me now, that you heard what I said now. We're affirming, yes, I heard what you said. I need some time. So a lot of that is ego. And that's what, when I get into self-love and self-worth, you know, that's what I like to talk about. And I like to coach my clients on self-worth and completely releasing that ego so that you can take control over your relationship. Because sometimes it's our ego that's in control. It's not really our higher selves that are speaking, and our emotionally intelligent selves, which is our higher selves. You know, they don't get a chance. They don't stand a chance to our ego, because sometimes we're truly just ego tripping. Calm down, and we need to, yes, okay, affirm that I heard you, but I heard you. And sometimes you can just walk away, because we're talking about, you know, coaching to the point where you can actually move forward without causing more turmoil.
Absolutely. Brittany, you know, one of the things, of course, as a social worker, I would be curious to know, how how do you feel partners can support each other in addition to what you've already shared? How can they support each other without ending up playing like de facto therapist?
So that is, I'm glad that you brought that up, because that is where I get the walking away from, because I do, deal with a lot of domestic violence, and sometimes in relationships, and we just want to keep it 100% when we're talking to our audience. Domestic violence is something that could take place simply off of a simple argument. A simple argument can cause something that we regret, throughout for a long time. So I want, from a social work point of view, when I get my clients in social work, my biggest thing is learning self-control. And I always tell them self-control, emotional intelligence, and my audience that I'm talking to, I have to speak to more of self-control. Hey, get control of yourself. And that is walking away. And then also allowing your partner to walk away, because if he or if she tried to walk away and you're, behind him, and you're, there's nothing happening out of that. That is giving all kind of toxicity, and it's not helping us heal. It's not helping me heal. It's not helping you heal. It's not helping, like Tommy said, the relationship, which ultimately we are trying to make this relationship a lasting one. So really and truly, it is self-control. One, stop, think, react. So you're not completely reacting. And then coaching, and I'm just going to throw this in here. At every milestone, you need some coaching. And also your environment. What is your family values and the environment that you're around? Are you around people, and do you have friends who are igniting the toxicity in your relationship, or are they preaching and coaching growth in your relationship? Because that is something too that can also make us, it can just, a person can have emotional intelligence, but if they have an environment, or they have a best friend, or their confidant, whoever they go to talk to, is that person on the phone that is, preaching, hey, and we all know that this happens too. No, she did this, she did that. Now you have gone right back and you've taken 3 steps back, even though you have all the tools to take 3 steps forward. So you're checking your environment as well. And sometimes you have to, love and relationships are very difficult. And it's kind of difficult because of the sacrifice. And that's why you have to make sure that, is this person worth the sacrifice? Because sometimes you have to sacrifice those toxic friends, and you have to set boundaries with them in order to move forward in your relationship, and also in your healing process.
Well said.
I don't know if we left. Oh, okay, there she is.
And so what does that look like on your side, Thomas? What does that look like on your side, supporting partners without playing therapist? What does that look like from your perspective?
Yeah. I mean, I think the difference between intention and reaction is a pause. So I love the idea of just taking a pause. I think that's in that pause is where the magic happens. And, when I think about emotional intelligence and creating a better life and better relationships, it all revolves around the stories that come up based on the triggered event. So your thoughts are going to fuel your feelings. And if you can't manage your feelings, then your feelings are going to stroke your behavior. And if any of those 3 things are unmanaged, it can lead to potentially a damaging situation, right? A hurtful situation. You can harm other people or harm yourself. So really becoming aware of what are the stories or the programs that are ruling or governing your dynamic of relationships, your view on relationships, your view on sex, your view on conversation. You know, have you always been in a conversation where you were fighting or felt like you had to defend yourself? Chances are that's how you're going to show up in conversations in your relationship. And it's not because you mean to, that's just your default programming. So that's where, when you have that level of awareness, that's when you can start to heal and work on that. So when you have different techniques where you can hold space in that pause, that's when there's opportunities for shifts to happen. So that would be like my number one thing is like, if you have the ability to pause and you have the ability to hold space, those two things can generate so much, from awareness to self-awareness to a sense of calm that can then lead to more productive conversation. And like Brittany said, like we seek instant gratification, and our world is so fast that we try to show up like that in our relationships, when that's the place where you get to slow down, right? Like that should be a place where it should be safe to slow down and to be able to have these moments of pause. And so I think those two things can help facilitate someone's own healing without you feeling like you need to lead it or facilitate it yourself.
So what did you say, Thomas? You said something and I almost fell out of my chair. Something between something and something is the pause. What was that
Oh,
again?
the difference between
I need to hear
intention
it.
and reaction is the pause. So, I'll break it down a little bit more,
Wow.
but you know,
So
when you're more intentional in your behavior, there's a lesser chance that you're going to be emotionally reactive. And if you are emotionally reactive, there's no space for you to be intentionally responsive. And so the best shot you got is if you just take a pause, right? You still may not be intentionally responsive, but you'll definitely be less emotionally reactive, right? And I think that is the more important piece of it.
I love that so much. Okay. Now, the one thing that I hear though from men a lot is that, they don't want to. Now, I hear it from women. Women definitely talk about not losing themselves, but I think oftentimes men infer not wanting to lose themselves in relationships because maybe they've been that codependent or that people pleaser, or some of the other things that we've talked about in certain coaching and therapeutic circles. So how do you feel like a man could consider his own healing, his own needs, and not get sucked into losing himself to the point where he operates as if they don't matter?
What's they, or who's they?
The man.
Oh, okay. Well, the first thing is a guy needs to, accept the fact that there's healing to take place. I think that's the first thing. I think if a guy is not willing to admit that there's healing to take place, which is virtually impossible, you're carrying generations of wounding into this life. And as a man, you have an opportunity to heal some of that wounding so that way your next of kin doesn't have to carry that burden moving forward. And I'm really passionate about that because that's how I live my life. Like, I don't want my daughter to have my woundings for her to heal. Like, she's going to have her own and she gets to heal those. Why add on top of that? So there's a great opportunity by just accepting that there's healing to be made. The other thing is, when you're choosing to go into this part of yourself that you probably have avoided, never been allowed to go into, don't know what's there, it's scary. I've been there. It is dark. It is cold, it is lonely, and you're blind. So it's one of those places where you are most vulnerable as a man. And if there's anything a guy does not want to feel, is vulnerable, particularly inside of his relationship, because his story around that is if he's seen as vulnerable, she'll see him as less attractive. And that actually might be true. Like there is risk in doing that, because you might feel something, or something may come up that may completely cripple you emotionally. And you're going to have to go through that, and you're going to have to be seen that way. It's not ideal. And the reason why I can speak to this so clearly is because I've been there. I know what that looks like. I've had my wife look at me and be a shell of myself and be exposed in that way. But it was what was necessary for me to become the man that I get to be today. And so if you're a guy who knows that there's something more for you in your life beyond just what you're doing, and there's an opportunity for you to explore your being, that is the kind of work that needs to get done. And what I would recommend is just have that conversation with your person. Let them know, listen, something's coming up that's big. I don't even know what this is going to look like. I feel like it might be sloppy. You might see a version of me you've never seen before. I need your support. I need you to know that I'm going to get to this other side, and I'm going to be better on the other side of that than I will going into it. But if you feel like you're worried about what it's going to look like, or you're worried that, then maybe we should take some space so I can go through this process and have that challenging conversation, be willing to do that. And once that happens, then you can focus on yourself and not lose yourself. I would say if you're not doing your healing, you're more likely to lose yourself. Because I think once you do more of the healing, you're going to start to realize how much freedom you have as a human being, and that you can exercise that freedom because of the healing. And I think the one way to lose yourself is when you give up that freedom of choice, that freedom of healing. So, that step process of accepting, being willing to do the work, knowing that it's going to be sloppy, and making sure that you have the conversation with your partner and make sure that they're going to support you in holding space and see you emotionally as you go through that, and try to be there with you as you come out the other side.
Thank you for that, Thomas. Thank you so much. Listen, guys, we're going to get into the part of the panel. I mean, this is so good. I don't even have, I'm so taken aback, and I'm so grateful to what's been shared. I want to share a few of the comments, going back to that amazing quote by Thomas. There was a difference between intention and reaction is the pause. I think that is so amazing. Wiggy says, I could use a hearing video demonstrating technique. Understood. But listen, at the end of the day, it's really just about being self-aware, emotionally intelligent, and truly demonstrating care for your fellow human. I think that's what gets lost in conversation. So I want us to start getting into your questions. And so I'm going to bring my panelists back up because they are so amazing. And we're going to get into some of these questions that you all have shared with us, because I think that they are super meaningful, and hey, you deserve answers. So welcome back, Thomas and Britney. Our first question comes from Moon Empress, who says, why do you think there's always such a small amount of men that show up for things like this that help with the work? Thomas?
I was curious to know what you guys thought, but I'll share. I think it speaks to guys. I think it speaks to once again, like guys not having the willingness to be seen that way, because it'll say something about them, the story behind what it means if they hire a dating coach. There was about 10 years of me working with men and them not wanting to talk to other people about the fact that they were working with me. Some people are married, and their wives will ask, hey, what happened to Thomas? Like, you guys were hanging out so much when we met. And they're not talking about the fact they hired, because they have certain feelings about how they think that'll look. Now, fortunately, that has subsided today, and a lot of people are open to that. But generally, when it feels like a guy is not, when they are doing something that may insinuate that he needs help in something, because for them, it's perception of lower status. Yeah. Well, that's what it really is, right? But they're in their head thinking about the fact that, oh man, I need help. That's weak. Women are going to see that. They're going to think that, you know, I'm not good enough and all that. So that's oftentimes what I hear from guys.
Wiggy says, "Oh my word, how long does it take for him to want more than the cookies?" I mean, I personally think that varies, and I think that, you know, I don't know. I'm going to say something that's going to sound horrible. I think men always want cookies. I'm just going to say that. I think that, yeah, I think they always want cookies. But I think that if you understand, you know, the power of said cookie, then you don't
can use
have
it to your
to give
advantage.
him cookies. It's just like I hate to say this. It's just like right. You don't have to give the cookies just because he wants the cookies. Okay, I'm gonna tap out. I'll let you guys handle that one.
So my thoughts on that is, you know, this is where you come to compatibility. Sexual compatibility is very important. And when people get into relationships and they are, like, for one, if you got workaholics in a relationship, or if you have people who just are not that, you know, they're not as sexual, then that's where the problem comes in. So in the beginning, these are the things that you have to weed out, and you have to prioritize. How important is this in my life? Because if sex is important, and that is something that is a priority to your partner, then maybe being in a relationship with this person is not a good idea. And then too, you know, women, we have to sometimes be more open to explore things, and more open to the fact that a lot of men are very sexual, and you are very rarely going to get a man that is not sexual. And I mean, that is the reality of it. The reality of it is they like sex, and it is what it is.
Yeah. And I'll piggyback that. You know, I feel like, you know, because guys want sex doesn't mean that you need to just easily give it up, right? Like, I think the sexual compatibility is an important thing. I think sex drive is another important thing. And guys, once again, are looking for that instant not instant. I mean, it would be ideal if it was instant, but guys are really looking for the validation of being desired and being wanted by, and they see it only through having sex. Now, a more, what I would call, like, I don't want to say it's synthetic because that means it's not real, but it's real. But a good replacement of that in the meantime is heavy flirtation, heavy sexual innuendos that you can play with. That's going to build the anticipation for that, because guys need to see that they are still being desired if they can't necessarily have the sexual validation. So it's important to also communicate to him in a way that lets him know that you desire him. And it doesn't always have to be sexual, right? You could just outright say, like, I think you're an attractive man. I think your intelligence is so sexy. You can be playful with him, but showing those signs, like, he needs to see. And I always say to women, what you think is subtle, guys see as non-existent. So, and so guys need to see those overt signs that there is desire there coming from you, for them to feel like, okay, I can keep going. I can keep going. And they will do that if they feel that connection with you as well.
And Thomas, is it fair to say that, you know, it depends on the stage of the relationship as well?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
I just get so caught up in y'all sharing that I'm over here like, yeah, about that. Okay, so great question coming from Creative Soul. What are some healing exercises couples can do together?
So good.
Healing exercises. Thomas, you want to go, or?
I'm actually, I'll keep it simple. Like, there's a book that my wife and I, went through, and we're still going through, that has really helped in changing the way that we show up in our relationships. And I just want to make sure I got the title right. It's Making Marriage Simple. And it's by Harville Hendricks and Helen LaKelly Hunt. And it goes through basically 10 exercises, principles that can allow you to come together. Now, marriage aside, I think this could work really well in also understanding relationships and connecting. So heart exercises, meditations, that's where I learned the Imago dialogue. There's so many different practices there. Something that my wife and I don't do as often, but we do try when it's like intense in terms of how we're feeling, is we'll sit in front of each other and we'll put each other's hands on the other person's heart. And what she taught me about that is when we do that, our heartbeats sync up. So they will lower and then they sync up. And when you're making that level of connection, it's that heart resonance, all of a sudden now you're seeing that person in a very different way, because you're literally synced up with them, even from the heartbeat standpoint. And so I've experienced the power of that myself. So I love that.
And I would say that the power of touch as well. A lot of meditation and the power of touch, hand gestures, as far as just sometimes hugging heals, and people, I say that because people don't realize how much giving someone a hug is very healing. Also vocalizing that you love them, saying I love you, that is, validate, constant giving them constant validation, I think, as well. And some people say, well, I don't want to have to keep validating them, or they don't get it. They don't know. It's a part of healing, because like Thomas said before, you never know what that person's background and their childhood are. Have they done inner child healing? Because when I say healing can get deep, because you have to heal that inner child as well. So if you have a partner who hasn't done that type of work, now you have to help facilitate that as well. So you have to touch, you have to hug, you have to show affection, and you have to not be afraid to, when you're to be very, very aware of how of their triggers as well. And when they are being triggered, affirm. That's when you can affirm the most. Hey, you are, I love you.
Yeah.
That would be the healing exercise, I would say, together. And even when you're dating, because it shows a person that you really care, and let's just I just want to say this before, I don't want to keep going on and on, but just really like simply texting that person back, making them a priority. We all read books and we all do that, and that is amazing too. But to get on everyone's level, simply showing that person that they're a priority is very healing. Texting them back, calling them. Hey, when they say, hey, call me, call them. It's very simple things that you can do that is realistic, and that will work instantly, and it eliminates the anxiety that people may have, because a lot of people have dating anxiety. And then a lot of and I've never been married before, but from my experience with married couples, a lot of the lack of healing comes from the anxiety of, oh my God, is this going to happen again? Sometimes it's not even lack of trust, it's the lack of anxiety. And it's like, you're just afraid and on edge all the time. So, validation, and you have to give your partner grace. And you got to be willing. So I think that's the healing exercise.
I love it. The only thing I would add to that is when you validate, you empower them. That's the thing. If you want to see behavior show up in a relationship that satisfies you, but also puts them in a good position, you want to validate that behavior. You want to call it out. You want to, one of the things that I'll never forget is the first time when my wife had told me that she was proud of me. Because I didn't hear that much from my parents. And I love my parents to death. They just weren't those type of parents to share that level of affection. But when my wife said that to me, in the moment, I was like, I will tear this whole house down for you. I'll run through walls, right? Like I'll go to war, right? Like the feelings that come up from that little bit of validation can go a long, long way. And then the continuation of that has a compound effect.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I feel like on the side, because those are so amazing. Validation / reassurance. You know, I feel like we're so busy sometimes trying to be a bad chick or a bad whatever, a boss chick or whatever you want to call it. I think sometimes we forget that when we're in a partnership, that we are connecting with our fellow human. So be human, do human things, you know, reassure that person, validate that person, listen to, like, it's not this hard. We've made it hard because I feel like sometimes it was easier to make it hard than to make it happen, you know? And so what I've been telling people lately, don't make it hard, just make it happen. And I think if you take it down, if you strip it down to the barest essence, right? When you're dating, you're checking for friend worthiness. You're checking how that person deals with their own humanity. And so human to human, I'm relating to you. So that means I can hug you. That means I can validate you. That means I can, you know what I'm saying? Human to human. It's okay for me to feel with you, to have empathy for you. On the couple side, though, I would say definitely for my married couples, and I've talked about this before, I want to see actively engaging in something I call couple care. I think one of the healing exercises that couples can do together is to make it a point to have a yearly checkup with a relational, not with your pattern, not with your friends that are married, but with an unbiased party who can help you navigate whether the things you're doing in your marriage are actually mutually beneficial. And I don't think that happens enough. It goes back to what Britney was saying, that and I call it a marked change. So at every marked change, you need some coaching or some therapy. There's just no way that you can continue to do this like this or say, oh, we had premarital with the pastor. I'm like, I get more clients that way because it's not thorough. It's not going to equip you. And if we're really focused on growing and evolving as people, the things you agree to in your marriage on day 0, they definitely don't apply on day 280 or day 635. Like, you can't expect, and I think that's a huge problem with relationships, is that we expect everything to stay the same, and including the people. And I'm like, something I always say is that if we can't grow together, we can't go together, and that's just the bottom line. So that's my thought on healing exercises. I want to jump into this question with Reese. Is there a way for women to meet men where they are without abandoning themselves?
Yeah. I mean, you don't need to save them. You know, like you don't need to save them. You can care about them. You can love them. You can see them and acknowledge them, but you don't need to save them, you know, because when you do that, you're validating them just the same, but the difference is you're not empowering them, you're enabling them. And that is not a place that you want to be inside of a relationship. And then while you're doing that, you're sacrificing yourself and you're creating a martyr out of yourself emotionally and inside the relationship. So once again, it goes back to understanding that there's three paths in the relationship. It's your healing, his healing, and then you two together and your healing. So at some point, he's going to have to do some work on his own, and you just need to hold space for that. And you meet them where they are, right? but have boundaries around that too. Don't let it impact your path. Don't let it impact your livelihood, your well-being, right? But you get to hold that space and allow him to grow. That's why the support is so important, because you have to also should have done enough to be able to take that responsibility on as well. And that's super important.
Well, I mean, Thomas, this is so good. And I totally 100% agree with you. And I think that a lot of the losing ourselves is the choice that we make, you know, when we do try to, like you said, save someone. But it's more of something like you just want something to work and you know that it's not going to work too. So sometimes it's, you know, you want something to work and it's just not going to work. So that's how you're losing yourself, because it's just not for you. And just really coming to terms with that yourself and having the self-worth to know that, hey, you know what? I'm sorry. I have to let this go because it's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guys, thank you so much for such powerful responses to these questions. Like, and these are great questions. Like, I have to give it to our audience. Y'all are giving some great questions. Like, I'm like, y'all want a job? Do any of y'all want to be coaches? Because these questions are like chef's kiss. Like, let's go. And we got a lot of comments on this side. I've been trying to share with them. Our panelist from Loving the Bottom Line, Natasha Campbell, has come back in the room, and with a good solid true, and we love a good true. And then she also comments on the 3 paths. Yes, I mean, it's so good. And I think the challenge with all of this, Wiggy says, woo, so beautiful. I think the challenge with all of this is really putting it into practice and finding it okay to be vulnerable. And I will say something that I've talked about before, something I call limb work, where you go out on a limb. And the thing with limb work is that you can't really care about what's going to happen. And limb work is really something that it can be pretty triggering. It's the telling someone I love you and not knowing if they're going to say it back. But in your own integrity, you say it because it's your truth. Like, I can tell you I love you, and I don't need to be like, do you love me back? Do you love me back? Because that doesn't invalidate what I feel for you. And if something, and just say life is precarious and it's unpredictable. And what I wouldn't want is the regret of not telling you how I feel. So we've got a couple of more questions I want to get into. I think we had a technical difficulty with Britney. I know she'll be back though. Y'all just give her a minute. Ironheart Blurred says, how do I wield the power of the poom poom? I don't give it out, but I'm interested in learning the power of such punani. I'm like, I think this one's my fault. I think this was my fault. But I'll say this. I'll say this. I started this. I'll take it on. I feel like, you know, the power is knowing that it's not y'all ever seen the video Tip Drill, where the dude is like sliding the credit card down the girl's back? It is horrendous. It is misogyny on display. But I think sometimes we are paying for our hearts with our poom poom. And I'm like, that's too big of a price to pay. Now, if you want to be engaged in physical intimacy, rock on, that's your business. But to barter your body for the sake of someone saying, oh, well, you're amazing, you're awesome, I think that's too big of a price to pay. And I know a lot of women are paying it. And then they're paying it to people that weren't even, you know, worthy of the consideration. And so that's creating like this vicious cycle. Thomas, what are your thoughts?
I think it's great to value what you have and what guys want, you know? And yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I think you absolutely nailed it, you know? But here's something that's really interesting that I think could really be helpful too. You know, this validation, I have to say again, the sexual validation is needed for pretty much the duration of the relationship. Um, you know, when a guy is in pursuit of you, it's because he deems you attractive, right? And so he needs to show that he is attractive enough to be worthy of the pursuit of you. And as time goes on, that dynamic may shift. Doesn't mean that he doesn't need to pursue you anymore, but you certainly need to also like acknowledge his attraction and to also pursue him to keep him around. Right now, there's a mutual desire of him, of you two wanting to stick around. And part of that is the sexual experience for men. Because once again, it's the validation. Because if you remember what we said earlier, talked about how rejection is something that will be perpetual in a man's life. Well, the inability to have sex and being in a relationship for a lot of guys is the equivalent of being imprisoned, because to them it doesn't make sense, right? They chose to be with that person in order to have some level of certainty that that connection can happen. And there's some things that need to happen, of course, for it to happen. But if you're withholding that because you're in the idea of holding power over that, that's not going to create a great dynamic in the relationship. But I think when you're first starting to date, I think it's important to put value on that, because that is value, and you are value, and you are worthy of that. And I think that's super important.
Yeah. I think, passing it out, is just, I mean, if that's what you want to do, there's no judgment here, right?
Yeah.
But if you're going to be that girl, then know what you're doing it. Like, if you're doing it, then know why you're doing it. If you're doing it because the pleasure and it's about you and it's mutual, okay, great. If you're doing it because you're doing what we call proving for the choosing, and you're doing this thing, I mean, you're pretty much dishonoring yourself anyway, because whatever you're doing under duress, and that's a whole different panel and conversation. We do have one comment or question rather from Creative Soul, and I've never seen this show, but I do have a little bit of experience with neurodivergent, so I want to put this up for us to discuss. What do you all think about the show Love on the Spectrum? Why does love seem so easy for them, parentheses, autistic individuals? I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if you've even seen the show. I know that I haven't.
I haven't seen the show, but I have worked with many clients on the spectrum. And one of the things that is a great challenge for them is their inability to perceive body language. So before, when I used to work with them, I used to try to teach them that. And it actually was counterintuitive, because it was almost like teaching them literally a different language, which it is, right? Body language is a different language. So what I decided to do is like not have them worry about that and just practice fully on their ability to communicate, but also to understand how to communicate, how to interpret communication from other people. And when they did that, their ability to form connections dramatically increased, because they didn't have to worry so much about the other things to look for that people who are not on the spectrum could probably more intuitively perceive and understand. So I think there is a little bit of a layer there when we think. I don't know if you've heard about the idea of communication, but it's like 55% body language, 38% tonality and grooming, and then 7% words, right? So oftentimes people who are on the spectrum don't have to worry about 55% of the communication. That does make it a little bit simpler for them in a lot of ways, right? And oftentimes they don't even have to think about tonality either, because they don't have the ability to perceive that oftentimes too, depending on where they are on the spectrum. So in a lot of ways, there's some distinct advantages around that, and it might make it easier for them in that respect.
Absolutely. And truthfully, it's a TV show, so let's not forget that part.
That's true too, right?
Reality TV or entertainment as it is, it's a TV show. They want to make things look easy. But I completely agree with Thomas on the neurodivergence of it. One of the things that we know about those who are on the spectrum is that they don't take cues. I mean, just like Creative Soul was saying, sarcasm, yeah, you can forget about it. You know, throwing hints, yeah, good luck and Godspeed. It ain't happening, people. Like, for real, it ain't
Yeah.
happening. If you want something, you better say it. You better say it clearly. And if you use a funky tone, you might create more of a situation than you're even bargaining for. So that is also my understanding. I have some colleagues, a friend of mine's son also, and then just research. You know, I think sometimes we just need to learn what's the best way. But as far as the show goes, I have to say it is entertainment. I see it on my list on Netflix. I haven't taken a look at it yet. So because of you, Creative Soul, I just might jump into that thing. But with that, I think we lost Brittany to a technical difficulty. And so I just want to say, Brittany, thank you. I know you'll catch the replay. What I really believe, I'm telling you the truth, I think her phone died. But
Oh,
you know, it
no.
happens. Thomas, you know, it's always a pleasure to spend time and space with you. Like, always a pleasure. You have been such a light. I feel like so many people just had weights lifted off of them, an understanding and reality. So, guys, I hope you've been taking notes. Thomas, before we finish this thing off, I got so enamored with everything. I thought to let you tell us what you've got going on over at the Professional Wingman.
First of all, sis, thank you so much. I so appreciate you. I love you. And thank you for just having me be a part of this. And flowers to you for making this happen. I hope everyone who's watching got a lot out of this and will continue to tomorrow if you signed up and on Saturday. If you want to learn more about, the coaching that I do, and the way I define coaching is bringing out the potential out of someone so they can live a better life. Whether it's in dating or in other areas of your life, it does not matter to me. I love coaching. I am a coach. I've been doing it for over 15 years now at this point. So I like to believe I'm pretty good. And over 400 marriages and engagements, responsible right now, 0 divorces. So I'm pitching, I'm batting 1,000, so to speak, which is pretty cool. But you can find me on most social media as the Professional Wingman. My DMs are open. Feel free to reach out. If you want to go to my site, you can go to theprofessionalwingman.com. Just a caveat, that site, the messaging, it is designed to speak to men because my mission is to help men achieve their impossible by coaching them beyond their potential. And the reason why is I want my daughter to live in a world where there are strong, powerful, masculine leaders that are supporting the world that we're living in. And in order for that to happen, I need to go out there and help create change in their lives. So, but that doesn't mean that I'm not open to working with women. If you are interested, you feel free to reach out. You can go and apply and I'll reach out to you and we'll connect.
Oh, absolutely, bro. I don't have words usually. Like, you're just a tremendous individual. The work that you've done, I know your story, what you've shared with us, who you've been, where you've gone, who you've become. We need more of you. Like, we really do. And so I'm just enamored with the work that you do. I'm in awe of the things that you share with us so freely and so generously. So, women, the Professional Wingman can work with you. Go see him. Okay, great. Thomas, thank you so much for being here. Thank you just doesn't even begin to describe how I feel about it. But thank you again, brother. Much love to you. I love you and
Appreciate
Star
you.
and the baby. Kiss everybody for
Yes.
me. Give mad hugs. And I will see you on the next one. Thank you. All right, guys, we did it. 3 panels, 1 day, 3 panels to go. So you got to figure out where you're going to be Friday night at 9 p.m. Central Standard when we're having our secret session with Nurse Millie J for our very adult conversation. And that's exactly what it's going to be. I'm planning to be in there on the couch with a bottle of something, just relaxing and having that conversation. So I want to invite you to come in, and how you can get there is to go to thecollegeofempowerment.com and sign up for the summit. So you will get access to our secret session. And then day 2 starts Saturday with our Dating After Divorce, as well as our How to Relationship panel. So guys, if I can't tell you anything else, I'm super excited that you've been here with me for 3 sessions, almost all day long. We have been learning and loving together. And for those of you who don't know who I am, my name is Stephanie D. McKenzie. I am an award-winning marketer. I'm also a multi-certified coach, but I'm mostly excited that I'm the founder of the College of Empowerment, because that means that I get to serve you like this. Have a beautiful night. Bye.
Welcome to the Marriage and Mating Summit, presented by the College of Empowerment to help us all get our ships together. At the College of Empowerment, we're innovating personal and professional development with an online community, courses, and private coaching. Take a course. Get a coach.